Today's episode of the Bleav in Steelers show is brought to you by BetOnline.ag. And the Pittsburgh Steelers are 7-point favorites at home in NFL Week 14 against the Cleveland Browns. If you want to get in on the action, BetOnline.ag is the place to do it. Over-unders, player props, spreads. Get in on the action today over at BetOnline.ag. BetOnline, the game starts here. Welcome into the Bleav in Steelers show. My name is Mark Bergin. We've got a special guest tonight. A little home action. Welcoming in Michael Keefe. He's the host of the Orange and Brown Report. Michael, I don't know if this is a good time to let you know about this, but the Steelers have won 20 consecutive games in Pittsburgh against the Browns. Welcome into the program.
Well, see you later, Mark. It's been fun. It's been a good time. There's nothing I like more than breaking a good streak, 20 consecutive wins. You know what number is not going to happen? 21.
Oh, all right. So why is that? Make the case for Cleveland in week 14 because they've actually played all right, coming off a loss on Monday Night Football. But these two teams saw each other in week 12. Remember that Thursday night game, the snow in Cleveland. Sounds like you're drinking the Jameis Winston Kool-Aid a little bit, Michael.
No, you know what I'm doing? I'm actually having fun watching my football team after 8 weeks of misery. That's what I'm doing. I'm having a good time. Again, that Broncos Monday night game, it's a loss, 2 pick sixes, but I would take that game over what we watched at the beginning of the season every single time. It was a good time. Do I really think the Browns are coming in there and laying a whoop into the Steelers? Maybe. But in reality, I do. I think the Browns. The thing that concerns me about the way the Browns are going to play, Mark, is a loss like that. And now it's you maybe had a slight sliver of hope if like you win out and things can. And now there's no hope for anything. This season's over.
You were still thinking playoffs.
No, not me.
Okay.
I'm just saying. I think in the locker room they could have that conversation. Like, all right, boys, we just got to. Now there's no conversation to be had. So now it's about pride. And now it's about hurting the Pittsburgh Steelers. And don't take it personal, because then we're going to try to hurt Baltimore too. And we're going to try to hurt Cincinnati, who already hurts, which is great.
Yeah.
But I do think the Browns are going to come in there and play a pretty decent football game.
And see, this is what I was saying earlier this year when Watson was still struggling. And I get that he has the monster contract. And I get that you traded. You made the trade and everything. Like, I understand all of that. Why didn't Cleveland go to Winston earlier to at least give the team a chance? Because they did the same thing a year ago and Joe Flacco saved the day. What took them so long this season to turn the reins over? Obviously, before Deshaun Watson got hurt. I'm never going to wish injury upon another player, but why'd they wait?
I had a guy screaming at me earlier today, actually, about this very same thing. And here's what I will tell you. I think it sucks. I think they knew it sucks. I think they knew this year it was going to suck. I mean, we had our guys for the OBR were at training camp, and they were all reporting like, Deshaun looks terrible. But you have, in the situation that they are in, which is a very difficult situation that they have put themselves in with Deshaun Watson and the contract and all of that. One thing that I will say on a positive, even though it's not good for this year, they gave him enough leash, and he did nothing. There's nobody that's clamoring for this guy to come back anymore. There's no conversations in Cleveland about, well, Deshaun could get healthy and then come back. Like, that was the conversation last year when he got hurt, after he led them to a come-from-behind win, an incredible win in Baltimore. The conversation was, man, it looked like he turned a corner. Things look great. That conversation it will never happen again in Cleveland. He was so bad for 8 weeks that I do think by letting him stay in there, even though it stinks for this year, by letting him stay in there and letting him be as bad as he was, the conversation's over about Deshaun Watson. They don't even have to think about that anymore.
But what I want to know is, like, if we have a blame pie chart, Stefanski, who's coming off being coach of the year, is it his decision? Is it general manager Andrew Berry's decision? Is this an ownership on down from the Haslams to say, hey, if you want to keep your job, Watson must play? Where do you point the blame of, hey, Watson was going to continue to remain the starter? And then again, you see what you have with Jameis Winston. Is he going to win you a Super Bowl? No, but he's at least moving the football. Who is to blame for to say we're going to continue to start Watson before his injury?
Mark, they all are. They all are. And it's been a hard conversation that nobody has the answer to be honest with you. Everybody here is asking that same question, and nobody has that answer because, in fairness to the Browns and the front office and the ownership, they have decided to go with the full-on unified front. So when they talk, Kevin Stefanski saying, I'm deciding to put Deshaun Watson in. Andrew Berry is saying, I support Kevin Stefanski and how he's playing Deshaun Watson. Jimmy Haslam is saying, he's not talking much, but they're deciding that going with that unified front, this is our decision. This is what we're going to do. So nobody really knows where to point the finger other than, to be honest with you, Mark, at Deshaun Watson. The guy stinks. He stinks. He was the worst quarterback in the entire NFL this year. Daniel Jones got cut from a football team halfway through the season.
Mm-hmm.
Deshaun Watson was worse than Daniel Jones. And yes.
Yeah. You're not lying. You're not lying.
Yeah. You could blame the front office. You could blame the coaches, whatever. But you got a guy making $230 million that was the worst player in the NFL. And so I think at some point you have to say, those guys made a decision. I do think there was an element of the long term in that decision of saying, hey, if he stinks that bad for that long, nobody will ever want to see him again. But ultimately, the guy that you paid $230 million to can't be the worst player in football. And he was. So he gets the blame.
And not even the off the field stuff. It was really twofold when the Browns brought him in. It was the guarantee, which I don't think the owners wanted to give to any player, let alone Watson, given all of his off the field problems. So it was twofold. And then he hasn't even been serviceable as a quarterback. And you mentioned it being a unified front. Like, this is not revisionist history, Mike. It's not. When they brought him in, his introductory news conference, there was Watson, there was Kevin Stefanski, and there was Andrew Berry. Jimmy and D. Haslam had their separate news conference off in Europe. They were not on a unified front from the jump on this. And Jimmy Haslam saying, oh, well, I consulted with my daughters to make sure that this is okay. I don't buy it. I do not buy that for a second. And you might be saying, well, Mark, you're playing the results game here. The only thing I can say on Cleveland's behalf for bringing in Deshaun Watson is they weren't the only team that wanted him. They were the only team to give him that massive guarantee, though.
100%. I agree with you 1,000. And listen, you're not playing the results game. This was not hard to see coming. If you're a Cleveland fan, you were hoping. Well, all the conversation when they brought Deshaun was, hey, maybe he's not going to be back to what he used to be because he didn't play for years. But man, if you could get 80% of the guy that Houston, you got a good quarterback. 80% of what Houston had is still a top 10 quarterback in the league. That was our conversation. Maybe he's not going to be that good, but 80%, he'll be all right. He never was that. He was never any of that. And it wasn't that hard. So you're not playing the results game, Mark. Don't beat yourself up over it, buddy. Lots of people saw this coming. As far as the other stuff goes, Mark, Jimmy Haslam apparently learned nothing from being a part of the Pittsburgh Steelers organization, where he was before, where he was like a minority owner before he bought the Browns. He learned nothing from that experience. When that guy talks, I turn the TV off. He very rarely is it something of value. So, again, the guys that I want to listen to, Andrew Berry, Kevin Stefanski, and again, they made, again, I think I said this to you last night. The one thing I'm not going to do, I will fault them for looking at Deshaun Watson and saying, this is a guy we're going to build our organization around with all the question marks, because the bust potential was huge. But what I'm not going to fault them for is understanding that the most important position in all of sports is the quarterback.
Absolutely.
And the Cleveland Browns have had trash bag after trash bag after trash bag of quarterbacks here since 1999. We have been the worst display of quarterbacks on the planet since 1999. So they took a swing And I don't fault him for that. And I want him to do it again.
They're going to need to. They're going to need to. The thing that hasn't made sense either is you've made excuse after excuse, bent over backwards to try to make this Deshaun Watson situation work in Cleveland. Yet the one bad season Baker Mayfield had where he had the bum left shoulder with the throwing harness, you want to run him out of town. Baker or Baker's team should have said, hey, we're shutting it down. We're going to have season-ending surgery. That should have came from Baker's camp, Kevin Stefanski, Andrew Berry, or Haslam himself. Someone should have said, hey, this season it's not going to work, even though we all want it to, coming off a playoff appearance where we almost knock off the Kansas City Chiefs to build upon success. And look, Baker Mayfield's not going to be an elite level quarterback. He led your team to the first playoff win in decades against my beloved Pittsburgh Steelers. Hop in here.
The Baker Mayfield thing is too extreme on the conversation here in Cleveland on both sides. We call them the Baker Bros. They still exist. And it's like the guy walks on water. And then you got people who are just downright haters. Baker Mayfield was a good quarterback here. He had 2 good years and 2 bad years. 2019 was miserable, and everybody blames Freddie Kitchens. But Freddie Kitchens wasn't rolling Baker out to the right because he felt the slightest ounce of pressure and then throwing the ball into the stands. Like, that's not what was happening. Baker had a really tough second year. That third year was amazing. That 2020 year, we all know what happened. Do you remember what happened? What was Pittsburgh's last game of the year?
Yeah. And Ben Roethlisberger, for whatever reason, just had to throw the ball like 70 times in a game. Like, good luck if that's your recipe for success. But yes, please continue.
Well, here's what I'll say. The narrative around Baker, and I think he actually is the one that said it best, and nobody listens to him because they want to have their own narratives.
Mm-hmm.
He did an interview that talked about he needed what happened to happen. Yeah. Baker was very notoriously stubborn here in Cleveland. They tried to get him an offseason coach to help with his throwing. He declined it. They tried to help him in several ways that he pushed back and said, I'm not doing that. He was difficult in Cleveland. I liked him. I think Baker's a good dude. I root for Baker with Tampa. I hate this. I hate that how we always have to talk about, well, look what he's doing there. He's doing some good things and some bad things. I would take him back here, sure, in a minute. But I think he needed to learn by going to a couple teams and having some really trying experiences before he found that home in Tampa. And I think that's what's led to a little bit of his success. So the Baker story to me is just so, he did what he did here. It was great. I don't think everybody was running him out for no reason, kind of like the narrative turned into. I think people kind of forget how difficult he was here.
I miss the Progressive commercials, though.
Well, who doesn't? I wish he would come back and just do them. Baker lives at the stadium even when he doesn't play here.
Yeah, when he was in Carolina, it didn't work, and then he's able to rejuvenate himself. It was that primetime game with the Rams, and maybe he picked up a thing or two from Sean McVay and company, and then he's been solid in Tampa. Again, is he going to win you a Super Bowl? No, but like if he won your first playoff game, what was it, since like 92? I cannot believe he wouldn't be like the king of Cleveland. It doesn't make sense to me.
Mark, think of what you are saying. Think of if you said that about a Steelers team. Like, again, the Steelers, I'm not trying to rip on the Steelers, but it's been a minute on a playoff game. So let's say they win a playoff game.
But you got to build somewhere. I hear you. Got to build somewhere, though.
No, you got to have a bar. You got to have standards. Winning one playoff game doesn't build you a statue. That is the loser mentality that I hear from Browns fans. That is loser mentality. I'm not saying you, but I hear it from Browns fans.
To win a Super Bowl, though, you've got to win a playoff game. So it's like there's barometers to all of this. I understand your point of what the bigger picture is with the AFC quarterbacks. It's something we saw in Pittsburgh of tail end of Roethlisberger.
Yes.
Mason Rudolph, Duck Hodges, Mitch Trubisky, Kenny Pickett, and now Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. So I hear what you mean. And it's not just the lack of quarterback talent, Mike, it's the lack of quarterback talent relative to the rest of the AFC. So I'm with you there. I think that's where we find common ground of, I could list off the names of all the elite quarterbacks in the AFC. Those are the guys you have to go up against in the playoffs.
But look at what Pittsburgh did. And first of all, a couple things. I think on every time you and I have ever talked, you have said the name Duck Hodges.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm at my Duck Hodges limit, buddy. I'm at my limit. I watched him.
Keep tally. And listen, this is why, though. Look, when Tomlin is a future Hall of Famer, right? I don't want to hear about, Super Bowl champion, the defensive coordinator, the defensive backs coach for the Bucks when they won the Super Bowl there and has gone to 2 Super Bowls. I want to hear about the year where they went 8-8. They had to bench Mason Rudolph in the 2019 season. Duck Hodges was his quarterback, and they still went 8-8. The next season, Duck Hodges goes to the CFL, and he's not even starting for his Canadian team. So that's why I mentioned Duck Hodges of we could talk about Mike Tomlin. He's got the Steelers 9-3 and 18 consecutive non-losing seasons. The point is he did that with a guy who was the 4th string quarterback at the start of the year because they traded away Josh Jacobs because they didn't think they'd need him. That's why I bring up Duck Hodges, because people want to point to, Mike Tomlin, the Steelers haven't had recent playoff success. They haven't won a playoff game since, they say that it's the 2016 season, January of 2017. Get your dates right. I'm fired up right now. But the point is who has his quarterbacks been? You could say, well, isn't Tomlin culpable of that? If you don't have the horses to win the damn race, how are you supposed to win the race? He hasn't had the talent he needs at the quarterback position, point blank period, Mike. He hasn't. Until this season, and you see what he does with a competent quarterback and competent quarterback play.
Yeah, it makes me, when I watch what the Steelers have done this season, it makes me sad that Deshaun Watson picked the Browns. It makes me sad that I'm glad they took the swing. I hate how it worked out. I like the approach. It made me sad that they felt the need to take that next step and offer that guaranteed contract, and so he joined the Browns. Because the reports that morning, I'll never forget that March day, the reports that morning were that he was going to sign with Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
It was down to Atlanta. He was going to Atlanta. It was like, all right. And there was actually a little relief. And then you got the report that he signed with Cleveland. But just imagine, even if the Baker thing wasn't working out, the swing for the Browns would have been there that the Steelers took. Russell Wilson would have been available at some point. Justin Fields would have been available at some point. You would have had a guy that could play halfway competent football. I will say this. I'm not going to say a lot of nice things about the Steelers, but I love the swing they took on those 2 quarterbacks this year. I love the fact, and it cost them nothing to do it.
Less than $5 million combined, and let's look at, who else was available? Kirk Cousins with Atlanta gets the monster deal, and he's on his way to being benched in Atlanta.
How does this guy do this?
Oh, it's crazy. Whoever his agent is, Kirk Cousins' agent, might be the best in all of sports, maybe of all time.
If I had 1 ounce of the marketing genius that is Kirk Cousins, the OBR would be on ESPN. If I had 1 ounce of that marketing genius, that dude is
Mike. We just got to get you a chain. We get you a chain and get you on an airplane, and people say it.
Can I remind people that dude still has a room in his house that has a spot open for a Lombardi trophy, and it's going to be open forever? And he keeps getting, I don't want to talk about Kirk Cousins. Sorry. You like that?
Oh, man. Oh, I see what you did there. I do. I do. You mentioned what the Steelers did, though, and the Bears goofed up when they waited until after the draft, the dust settled. There were no other suitors for Justin Fields, and everyone's like, do you remember the reports where it's like the Bears are going to try to get a first-round pick for Justin Fields? And it's like, okay, who from Chicago is leaking that? Because that's never going to happen. Maybe a 2nd or 3rd round pick, maybe. A 6th round pick that could turn into a 4th round pick. You could say it's highway robbery, but it's how Omar Khan does business. And there's the reason why it's like Omar's coming in homage to the great character on the HBO program.
The Wire.
Oh, gosh. Yes, The Wire. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. But it's just like going into this year, and I was wrong. I'm going to admit when I was wrong. I would have continued playing Fields with the 4-2 start. Russell Wilson's come in, linked up with George Pickens, and how much longer they can keep this rolling. I mean, coming off a game in Cincinnati where their first half stats, we talked about this last night on your show. We talked about this last night where it's like the first half stats for Pittsburgh last week, I'm used to seeing in one game, and it was the first half. So it's just like I can't really believe what I'm seeing because since I've started covering the Steelers and watching their games very, very closely, it's an offense where I'm just not used to it. It's like, it's like pinch myself. Am I still in a fever dream right now?
Well, I think as I watch and the what I do watch of the Steelers when they're on TV, I think such a difference in their offense and how they operate, in my opinion, is the evolution of George Pickens. I think George Pickens has always been somebody that's had that potential. I think George Pickens has always been a guy that people have talked about maybe a little bit higher in the echelon of receivers than maybe they should. But he's, in my opinion, he's always been a guy that can make a big play, but then also can disappear in a game. And we haven't seen a lot of that this year. I mean, George has turned into what I think is a little bit more of a well-rounded receiver. I think he's still not on that upper level of wide receivers, but he's certainly, I'll be honest with you, when the Browns, he always makes that one stupid play against the Browns where he goes up for a one-handed catch, or Denzel Ward's got him blanketed down the field and somehow he winds up. That play happens once a game. It will happen in this game against the Browns. I don't know who it's going to be against, but he's going to do something stupid, ridiculous good in this game. But to be honest with you, in years past, when we would preview the Browns-Steelers games, I wasn't really concerned about, I was like, George Pickens will make that one play and then you might hear his name one more time. That's kind of how he had been. And I think he has evolved into a little bit more of a complete threat, a guy you really have to worry about all game long. And I think that's because he's got good quarterbacks.
I thought you weren't going to say anything nice about the Steelers, Mike.
I got it. I'm coming onto your show. I got to look somewhat smart sometimes.
Right.
It's hard for me to do.
Yeah, it's Pickens, I think, is at a real crossroads here because he's in his third season. He'll be in the final year of his rookie deal next year. Do you want to go into next year where it's 1 year and then he could get a premium of what you have to pay for the receiver market? Do the Steelers want to get out ahead and say, hey, we'll offer you maybe a little bit less that you could make on an open market, but you know that you're going to see that contract through? How that plays out, it's going to be really interesting to watch because the Steelers aren't afraid to let receivers go, whether it's Deontay Johnson or Chase Claypool. I could go on down the line, but really they haven't had a receiver like this with this type of ability. I'm not saying he's Antonio Brown, but until Antonio Brown made big money when he was coming off his rookie deal, say 5, 10, 15 years ago. So that's kind of like where I'm at, where it's like, do you want to leave the black and gold where you've got the Superman cape, where you go elsewhere, where it's like those superpowers and all those miraculous plays kind of dry up a little bit? And he's got to channel that fury the right way, though, because I look at this past week where he just has 2 boneheaded penalties. And it's like, dude, that fire that you play with, do it in a way that helps your team, not in a way that could potentially cost your team. Against Cincinnati, it's not going to cost you, but against better competition and really in division play, it can. And in games that really matter where you're fighting for home field advantage, you can't have stupid self-imposed mistakes.
You hit on something in your comments there that is one of my biggest frustrations in all of sports. It's like the world now. Everything's just extreme. You can't just pay a good football player what a good football player is worth. You have to, if you have a good football player, they're going to come try to get the max. It happens in football. It happens in baseball. It happens in basketball. These contracts that you see these guys getting.
Mike, you were talking about how things are extreme in max contracts, particularly when it comes to NFL wide receivers.
Well, and it really is any position, right? If a guy is good, there should be tiers to this, right? Like a guy like George Pickens, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they should be able to go to him and say, no, dude, you're not Justin Jefferson. You're not Jamar Chase. You're not some of these top level echelon receivers. You're like in the next group and you get that kind of contract. But that's not how any sport works at this point.
Yeah.
If halfway decent, you're going for that max deal. And it's like, you can't be giving these guys, I have all of these decent players max deals. It's why I do appreciate what Pittsburgh has done in the past and said, like, all right, Chase Claypool or Juju Smith-Schuster or whatever, you were good while you were here, but we're not going to overpay you for this. I wish more teams would do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think Pickens right now is trending to where he sticks around. But then when you pay him, when you pay the quarterback, when you have to pay other guys, what else falls by the wayside right now? Because you can kind of load up this team. Really, most of the salary cap's on the defensive side of the ball right now. But you can load up this team where you're not paying the quarterbacks hardly anything. And that's what I was trying to tell people, where it was like, everyone's like, oh, well, we're abandoning Kenny Pickett in year 3 and his development. And it's like, okay, would you rather have Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph, who are more expensive than Russell Wilson and Justin Fields? Like, if we're playing Madden, the video game, I'll tell you right now which quarterbacks you'd rather have. And that's been the difference with this offense. Arthur Smith has proved to be a huge difference compared to Matt Canada and Randy Fichtner at the offensive coordinator positions. And really with Russ coming in, it's like as simple as this to me of what has he done well? And you say the moon ball, throwing the ball downfield, his command of the offense. Just get the ball to your best player. Like, find creative ways to get the ball to your best player, and you see what happens. Again, I still am like, it's been years since I'm like, I don't hate watching the Steelers on offense anymore, Mike. It's been years since I've been able to say that.
You say the name Matt Canada, and I'm going to imagine the entirety of the city of Pittsburgh. You could just hear him groan when you say that name. So yeah, Arthur Smith's been a huge difference maker.
You and I could game plan for Matt Canada, where it's like, from a fan standpoint, and I'm actually being serious about this right now, if you could predict what was happening as a fan, can you imagine where you have a full week as a defensive coordinator of what's to come? Like, that to me is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Were you inspired at all last night with Mike Tomlin on Hard Knocks? Did that make your heart swoon at all, Mike?
Yeah, Mike Tomlin always out here making my heart swoon. That's what he does all the time. Every time I see his face, I'm like, oh, swoon. Take it easy.
You didn't want to run through a brick wall at all listening to him speak, leader of men. I thought he was by far the biggest standout in the opening week episode of all the teams in the AFC North.
So I do have to tell you, I have not seen it yet. I did 2 shows last night. I've been out of the house all day today. It's actually the first time I've seen my house since 5 o'clock this morning. So I appreciate you having me here, but I have not seen that episode of Hard Knocks yet, but I will be watching it. But listen, to all the Steelers fans, I argue with people about this all the time. Every Steelers fan I know, Mike Tomlin leaves the Steelers and a team will fire their coach to bring him in. Like, please understand that. This dude is, just be happy with this guy and know that winning Super Bowls is really freaking hard. Know that winning playoff games is really freaking hard. But you can't lay it all at the foot of that guy. That guy has been so good for so long. I've been rooting for Pittsburgh to fire Mike Tomlin for a decade. I've been rooting for them to fire him for a decade, and he just keeps winning games, and they don't fire him.
Yeah.
From my perspective as a Browns fan, I think Mike Tomlin is almost exactly the ideal candidate to be a head coach.
You mentioned being a head coach for one of the other teams, about a network where it's like you need a commentator, Mike Tomlin in the booth, where it's like, if I'm one of these broadcast networks like an Amazon and I want to go compete with the Foxes and the NBCs and the CBSs of the world, you put him in front of a microphone, it's just like he captivates your attention.
I think I'd be afraid to be his play-by-play partner. Because if I maybe called something wrong or said the wrong thing, I would be afraid he would like throw me out of the booth, like pick me up and launch me.
All right, this is going to be the portion of the program, and we'll start to wrap here. We're almost 30 minutes in. I haven't mentioned Myles Garrett at all. He dominated the Steelers at this first matchup. He had 3 first-half sacks, a game record. He was better in that one than TJ Watt was. I know Steelers fans are always like, oh, TJ Watt's better than Myles Garrett. Well, in week 12, Myles Garrett was much better. In week 12, the Browns did a nice job at slowing Watt down. I thought they did as good a job as any team in the league this year, considering Watt is your favorite right now for NFL Defensive Player of the Year. What do you expect from Garrett? Do you expect more of the same in week 14 when these two teams play?
I think Myles Garrett might have a little say about what you just said right there. But
not this year.
Myles
Defensive Player of the Year.
Myles' numbers are sneaky, and it's not just his numbers. It's what, again, this is always going to be the argument with TJ Watt and Myles Garrett is TJ Watt will have the surface level stats. Myles Garrett will have the depth stats every single time. Every single time he will have a better pass rush win rate. He will have a better double team beat rate. He will, it's the way it's been almost every year. I also don't think we have to talk about these guys in terms of one guy sucks and the other one doesn't.
Yeah.
These are the three
both elite. Both elite.
In all of football. I like the matchup for Myles Garrett. I would be more concerned. I would almost be more concerned about the matchup if Justin Fields was the quarterback. You look at what Denver was able to do with Bo Nix. They got Bo Nix away from Myles Garrett, and he was able to use his legs, get out. They constantly were getting him out of the pocket, moving to the right, to the left, getting that pocket moving. And it really was, they were able to kind of keep him out of the grasp of Myles Garrett. You're not obviously going to do that with Russell Wilson. He's going to be in that pocket. And so Myles is a threat every single time he's on the field. I don't know that anybody should be confident, just like nobody should be confident with TJ Watt either. I don't think anybody should ever be confident that they're going to do something and line up against Myles Garrett and it's going to stop him, because it very rarely does.
Yeah, we talked about it last night too. Steelers due to get back Alex Highsmith from an ankle injury. So you got some more depth there. Watt, Highsmith, Herbig off the edge. Awfully great bunch. And then again, I mean, Garrett, you have to know where 95 is, just point blank. You got to know where he is among the best in the league. And it's a treat to watch them play football. It really is.
I almost don't take this. TJ Watt's one of the most hated athletes in Cleveland because of some of the things that's been said. But I don't mean this as a slight to him. But I think Highsmith is such a good player that I almost think it's a shame. I feel like him being out there with TJ takes some credit away from Highsmith.
Yeah, I mean, I think TJ Watt's going to overshadow a lot of players. I mean, I hear you, but continue. What do you mean by this?
Well, there have been on many occasions a time where Highsmith collapses a pocket, forces a quarterback to move, and TJ Watt's just there to bring down the quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And that's good. That's a good tandem. But it's like, man, TJ Watt gets credit for that sack, but it was Highsmith that blew everything up in the backfield that really caused that. And I think Highsmith is very disruptive. And I don't know that he gets the credit around the league that he should, because there's a lot of times where he blows things up and TJ Watt winds up with that sack.
Yeah, it's been a race to the quarterback with the Steelers too. And with Highsmith out, he's battled injuries this year, had a groin injury earlier this year too. Your forced fumbles leaders NFL wide. TJ Watt's first in the league. He's got 5. Nick Herbig tied for second in the league with 4. So he's been pretty good too. The second-year player out of on Wisconsin to the quarterback. I mean, like making opposing offenses' lives a living hell.
Yeah, that's what they do. But again, with the Steelers defense, and they've been really good, but man, if you can provide just a little bit of time for your quarterback, if you can provide time for the quarterback, I like some of the players they have in that defensive backfield.
Mm-hmm.
I like the way they play. But if you give a quarterback a little bit of time, the Steelers have shown that they can be susceptible to some big plays, to making like you saw the penalties. We talked about that last night, the Joey Porter penalties. So that's the key for the Browns in this game, just like it was last time. And that's how they got the win. Give Jameis a hot second to drop back there and throw the ball. Yeah. And if you do, you're going to have a shot in this game. If TJ Watt and Highsmith and Herbig and Cam Hayward, if those guys collapse your offensive line, which the Browns offensive line has been much better lately, but if those guys collapse that offensive line and get to Jameis Winston all game long, the Browns won't have a chance. So that's the key to the game.
I look at the three levels of Chubb, Njoku, Jerry Jeudy as well. I look at those three guys as how you got to kind of slow things down. Mike, what's the case for the Browns come Sunday for Cleveland? I know you're going to stump for Cleveland to end that streak in Pittsburgh, but what's the case for Cleveland? The floor is yours. And let me step out of the way here.
Yeah, listen, if the Browns win, it is an upset, right? We're not disputing this. This is a Pittsburgh Steelers team that has been good all season long, coming off of just a total an offensive showing against the Cincinnati Bengals. But the Cleveland Browns defense, even though they haven't been as good this year as like they were 1 last year in the league, I think they're 24 this year. It's a much better defense than what Cincinnati's trotting out there. And so I think the Cleveland Browns are able to get to the quarterback. I think Myles Garrett is able to make plays in that backfield. And again, just some of the other guys, it kind of maybe feels like a ragtag bunch, but like Obo Okoronkwo is a good player. Dalvin Tomlinson's a good player. Shelby Harris and Maurice Hurst and Mike Hall, the rookie, they've all been good on that defensive line. I think the Browns are going to be able to create havoc in that Steelers backfield. I think they're going to, again, be able to bottle up the run a little bit against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I just think George Pickens and Denzel Ward, I know George gets him once every time they play, but generally speaking, over the course of an entire game, Denzel Ward's an elite level cornerback in the league. And I like that matchup for the Browns offensively. Again, I talked about it. I don't know that the Browns are going to be able to run the ball. Nick Chubb is he's not all the way back. He's playing. It's exciting. It's fun. He's not all the way back. That burst hasn't been there, and it won't be there until next year. Jerome Ford being healthy again was a nice touch. He made a couple nice runs on Monday. But the Browns under Ken Dorsey, I don't like their run schemes. I don't like the way that they are trying to get the ball. They're very predictable on the run. So I don't think the Browns are going to be out there running the ball 40 times in this game. I think it's going to be on Jameis's arm. And one thing I will say is we can talk about wide receivers all we want. But again, the stat that may surprise a lot of people, after having, I think, 230 yards receiving through the first 8 weeks of the season, Jerry Jeudy is now the number 5 receiver in receiving yards this season.
Crazy.
Coming off of a monster game. That dude has as many receiving yards. He is tied with CeeDee Lamb in receiving yards. He has emerged as a go-to guy. I think Njoku, I think Jerry Jeudy, I think they make plays. And if the Browns can keep Jameis Winston upright and give him time in the pocket, I think they're going to score points.
Yeah, easier said than done, but they got it done in week 12. It's a shame we're not going to have the wintry snow that we saw in Cleveland on that Thursday night game a few weeks ago in Pittsburgh. Aesthetically, it was beautiful. But he is Michael Keefe. He is the host of the Orange and Brown Report. Michael, if there's anything you need to plug with what you're doing, take it away.
Hey, man, the OBR is it's a cool site, man. It's the oldest and largest independent Brown site in all of Cleveland. Been going since 1999. So the OBR, it's a very in-depth, very analytic-driven website. And so if you want to know what Browns people are saying about the upcoming game, if you want to know what we are saying from an analysis point of view, just go to the OBR.com, check it out. And then, again, we've got our streaming network as well, where I got my show. I got 2 shows every Tuesday. I got the Doghouse, where I preview the upcoming Browns game. And then if you want to just have fun and listen to a couple guys, have some beers and talk about sports, I've got Garage Beers every Tuesday at 9 p.m. Yeah. I have a feeling there's not going to be a lot of Steelers fans that show up to a lot of those places.
Okay.
But I do appreciate you, Mark. And you're an awesome guest for me every time I ask you to come on. I very much appreciate it. And I have a great time talking with you every time we do this. So thank you for having me on your show.
Michael, likewise. He's Michael Keefe. I am Mark Bergin. I'll be back live on this feed after Browns and Steelers in NFL Week 14. The season is rolling along. Be a little bit later. It's not going to be right after the game this week, but keep it here on the Bleav in Steelers show. If you enjoyed listening to this show, give us a 5-star review, Apple and Spotify. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button on the Mark Bergin YouTube page. I will see you Sunday. Again, Steelers, Ravens, NFL Week 14. Until then, take care. So long, everybody.